The United States has done a good thing for the world in bringing this process forward, and now we all eagerly await the Russian response and urge them strongly to consider ending all hostilities so people will stop dying. We're going to bring it to them directly. We're going to say that Ukraine is prepared to stop all battlefield activity and begin the immediate process of negotiating an enduring end to the war, and we'll see what their response is. If their response is yes, then we know we've made real progress and there's a real chance of peace. If their response is no, it would be highly unfortunate and it would make their intentions clear. So we hope to have a positive answer from them. The ball is truly in their court.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio speaking there. We can now bring in our international affairs editor, Angela Diffley. Angela, good afternoon. Great to see you. You heard there from Marco Rubio. He's been giving slightly more details during his stopover in Ireland. What more do we know about this potential ceasefire deal?
Yeah, he was asked whether the United States backed this idea of European defence forces to enforce any ceasefire. Russia has repeatedly said that it is against the idea of any European forces in Ukraine. And Rubio said, you know, there are different ways of constructing a deterrent. So he was pretty vague on that. He was also quite vague again on the idea of this minerals deal. It certainly looks as though that is set to be agreed between Ukraine and the United States. But whereas Donald Trump before had suggested that the minerals deal in itself would be a deterrent against Russia reinvading Ukraine, because Trump suggested he would never dare to invade Ukraine while US companies were on the ground there. Yeah. That hasn't deterred Russia in the past. There were US companies in Ukraine before. Rubio said he would class it, he said, I would not couch it as a security guarantee, but it would certainly give the United States a vested interest and a reason to want to protect its interests in Ukraine. He also talked a little bit about how Europe might be involved in these next stages. He was suggesting that Europe might use either as a carrot or a stick, the idea of reimposing or tightening up sanctions against Russia, or indeed lifting them. And indeed this idea of the frozen Russian assets. For the moment, the European Union has frozen $200 billion worth of Russian assets. It uses the profits from those assets, but not the money itself, and is very wary of using the money itself because it's wary of deterring foreign investors in the European Union. If foreign investors think, well, my money could be taken. Yeah. That said, there are legal grounds for doing it because the invasion itself was illegal, so there's an argument that it might not be illegal to do that. In any case, the United States worries much less about deterring investors into the European Union. So that argument is out there as well, on the table, said Rubio. The question of Ukraine accepting that territory seized by Russia would be kept by Russia was not discussed. That would be for a much later stage after any 30-day ceasefire.
Now, Washington says the ball is now in Moscow's court. What is the likelihood that Russia will actually sign up to this deal?
It should, first of all, be said it might sign up to it, but will it adhere to it? That is the real worry from the Ukrainians. They say, we've just said, Zelensky said, we do not trust the Russians. So anything they might sign up to, in the past, they have reneged on agreements. Famously, the Minsk Accords were reneged upon. So there is the question of whether or not it will adhere. In terms of whether it will sign up, there are incentives and disincentives. Certainly, the Russian economy is suffering, and that is a clear incentive for Putin to want to wind this thing down. On the other hand, he would then have to justify a significant loss of life. The Russians were led to believe that within a week of the special intervention in Ukraine, as it was called in the beginning, that there might be some kind of puppet government installed in Kyiv. Things really didn't work out that way. So he would then have to face the Russian people with that. What is interesting is that we are now coming to the stage where we will see what Trump's relationship with Putin really amounts to. There's a suggestion that Trump appears to think that he has, in a way, bonded with Vladimir Putin.
I mean, he was sending him COVID-19 masks during the height of the pandemic, so they have a relationship clearly.
Absolutely. And, a lot of people trace it back to, of course, that big investigation into allegations that the Russians intervened in Trump's campaign to be elected in 2016.
Yeah.
Trump calls that a fake witch hunt. He suggests that both of them went through such an appalling experience during that they somehow bonded. We'll see if it amounts to anything. That said, what kind of leverage does the US have on Russia? Again, it could impose tariffs. Trump waved that around last week, but the tariff story is proving very complicated around the world. Sanctions, again, but the Russians are good at circumventing sanctions. Sure. There is always the possibility, Trump is so unpredictable. He might well say, look, this is the deal, take it or leave it. If you don't, I am going to massively arm Ukraine and effectively switch sides. He's so unpredictable, that is not something I would rule out.